Hi everyone, I'm back today doing another watercolor demonstration, and for those of you who are new here or don't remember me, I'm Sarah and I'm an intern here at GoggleWorks. So just as a recap, I'm going to go over what everyone has inside of their kits. As you can see, you will have a piece of tissue paper which can be placed underneath of your painting so that nothing gets on the table. You'll also have a set of watercolors. You also have towel paper, which you'll dab the excess water off of your paintbrush onto. You'll have a paintbrush, a cup which you'll fill water with, and a bunch of pieces of watercolor paper. So today we're going to be creating a really fun under the water sea kind of painting. As usual, start with the background, and for this particular background, I'm going to do a really light value of blue. So I'm going to use more water than usual. So it's almost like light is shining right through the paint. Because when you're underwater, you can almost see through the water. So I'm going to just do some nice light details. And this term is actually called transparent. I'm going to go back in at the end of this, though, and add more wave-like details. You're going to go ahead and let that sit for about a minute or so it can be nice and dry, so all your details don't run through the water. Because when you put wet paint on wet paint, it will blend. Whereas if you put wet paint onto dry paint, it will be more stiff and controlled. The underwater seaweed. So I'm going to start with some green, because a lot of seaweed is green. And I'm just going to throw in a bunch of fun spirals. These can be all over the place. They can be connected. And it's really important that you go nice and slow with this step, because if you start too soon in some places, as you can see where I'm working right now, it's running a bit. But that's totally fixable if it runs more than you guys want. But I'm going to go ahead and add some blue seaweed. I'm going to go back in with some green on top of the ones I already did, just to make them pop a little bit more. Especially for where it ran, I really want to make sure you guys can see it nice and clearly. So now that I have all of that filled in, I'm going to add coral, and coral is found also in the ocean. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of orange and red and place some in there. So as I let that dry, I'm going to start filling in some fishes. If you want to do a shark, if you want to do a turtle, feel free to do anything, but I'm going to start with the fish right now, and I'm going to do some clownfish, so I'm going to go in with orange again. And a really great way to do fish is you're going to start with a circle. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. And on whichever direction you want your fish to go, you're going to add a triangle with the point of it just touching the circle. And this will create almost a fish-like body. And if you want, you can add a fin, which is another smaller triangle. And I'm going to go ahead and add a stripe to the back of it. And if you want, you can add an eye. That's up to you. And I'm going to go ahead and outline my fish a little bit. It'll just help it stand out. Just go really thin with the point of your brush. And there's my first fish. If you only want one, that's fine. I'm going to do a bunch real quick. And I'm going to show you guys how to do a little turtle. So you're going to dip it into whatever color you want the turtle to do. I'm going to do the classic green. So I'm going to do one big circle like that. So I did one circle. You're going to do a little tiny one at the front. A little tail, so just like a little line. If you want it circular as well, you can do a little circle. Just make sure the head's a little bit bigger. And I'm going to do 4 feet. And I'm going to go in with some brown. Just a little bit of water on it this time. I'm going to only outline the shell. So the big circle is going to be outlined. And then you can just add any shapes to it. I'm going to do some squares. You can add a pattern. You can do whatever you guys want. You can add spots. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into the water while I let that dry, because those are the details I want in it for now. So I'm going to dip my paintbrush into the blue again. And typically, there's bubbles in the water. So I'm going to do a couple polka dots here and there where I'm just going to dab the paintbrush onto the paper right above where the fishes are breathing, where the turtle's breathing. Just put a couple here and there. So those are small ones. If you want to be a little bit more detailed, what you can do is do a C. As you can see, I did a C. What I'm going to do is just dip my paintbrush in water with the blue still on it, and super lightly, so that was a little darker than I wanted, so I'm going to go back. Super lightly just brush it out. So as you can see, just the one side is super dark. If you want it a little darker, you can go back in and go over that. And I'm going to do a little line in the middle to show. So this is nice and easy. You're working with more water and less water in this. So it's a little transparent, like I mentioned before. You can see through it almost, but you still see the pigment of it. And now I'm just going to go back in and add some lines so you can see how the water flows a little bit. And after I put in the lines, I'm going to try to blend them out with more water. So I'm going to clean off my brush and make sure there's still water left over. Just kind of run my brush through it. And it adds a little bit of texture into the water. And lastly, I'm just going to go back into all my seaweed and coral. Just make sure all the lines are really crisp. If you want some details in that, like a leaf almost, you can take the black and add a nice thin line to it throughout the middle of it. This just contains a bunch of different options for you guys. Have a good one, everyone.